This video is inspired by real events. Certain scenes and details have been altered or dramatized for storytelling purposes. I was 10 years old on what seemed like an ordinary Monday morning. I left my home in Vienna with my school bag over my shoulders, my face tight with frustration after arguing with my mother. It was a small disagreement, just a few sharp words. But I never imagined those would be the last she'd hear from me for so many years. The sky was dull, the air biting, and my feet dragged along the familiar route to school. I remember noticing a white van parked by the curb. It didn't stand out back then. As I got close, a tall blonde man stepped out, completely silent. In an instant, everything was different. He seized me before I could even react. My body went rigid with shock. He forced me inside the van and slammed the door, cutting me off from everything I knew. I was gone, just like that. My name is Natascha Kampusch. I spent 3,096 days in captivity. For 8 long years, I was hidden in a basement beneath the house of a man named Wolfgang Psychloppel, someone I'd never met before that day, but who would control nearly every moment of my life for almost a decade. Nobody saw what happened that morning. No witnesses, no evidence. My face became another missing child poster, another name shared in hushed prayers. But under a trap door in a quiet suburb, I was alive, waiting in pitch-black silence, hoping desperately to be found. But no one came. Not for a very long time. When I first woke up there, I didn't know where I was. The air felt stale, untouched for years. The room was tiny, barely bigger than a closet. Bare concrete walls. No window, no sounds from outside. Only a heavy, suffocating quiet that pressed on my ears until my thoughts were deafening. He warned me not to shout. Said no one would hear anyway. To the outside world, he was just a quiet telecom technician. But to me, he was something else entirely. He had planned every detail. He'd constructed that hidden cell beneath his house, sealed behind metal, hidden under layers of concrete. Soundproof, escape-proof. He told me it was my new home. At 10, I couldn't truly understand what was happening. I thought I'd wake up and it would all be over. That night would come, and someone would rescue me. But night fell. Then morning, and no one came. The days blurred. No clocks. No daylight. Just the routine he dictated. Meals he brought. Lights he controlled. He shaved my head. He told me I no longer mattered. That everyone had forgotten me. But I refused to forget who I was. Every night I repeated my name silently. Natascha. I held on to it, because if I lost my name, I'd lose myself completely. He talked to me sometimes like I was a little child, other times like I was nothing more than property. He insisted he had saved me, that no one else would want me now, that I should be grateful. He wanted total authority over me, over my words, my thoughts, even my body. But inside, I resisted, quietly, secretly. I refused to give up the one thing he wanted most, my identity. Even though I was buried in a concrete cell, something inside me stayed alive. A small, stubborn flame. A vow. I will get out of here someday. Days lost their names. Time didn't pass in the normal sense. It just stretched endlessly, the same cold grey routine. But he didn't always keep me locked in the basement. After a while, he began taking me upstairs. Not to free me, never that. It was just another form of imprisonment, another way to mold me into what he wanted. He imposed strict rules. I had to speak respectfully, wait to be spoken to, ask permission for even the simplest things: food, water, using the bathroom. Disobedience brought punishment, silence, starvation, sometimes physical blows. But what unsettled me most was when he was calm, talking to me as if we were partners, as if I had chosen to be there. He called it a relationship. It wasn't love, it was domination. He gave me books. He sometimes let me watch TV. But even then, he dictated what I could think, what opinions I should have. He tried to reshape me into the person he wanted. And I played along, not because I believed him, but because it was the only way to survive. I smiled when expected, agreed when he spoke, made myself quiet, obedient, small. But behind that mask, I was making plans. I memorized his habits, watched his moods, counted the moments when doors were unlocked, when I could hear noises from outside. He was my captor, but he was still human, and humans make mistakes. My only job was to stay alive long enough to catch that mistake and run. That became my mission. Even if it took years, even if it took forever. To the rest of the world, I was gone, as if I no longer existed. But I did exist. I breathed. I read. I listened. I grew up in that hidden place, not the way a child should grow, but in silence and constant fear, like a plant forcing its way up through concrete. Wolfgang controlled everything about me. My meals, my hair, my weight. He monitored the books I read, the words I spoke, even how I sat or chewed. Any small act of defiance, sitting wrong, disagreeing, making too much noise, brought punishment. He wanted perfection, not for my sake, but for his. He needed me to reflect the fantasy he'd built in his mind. A world where I belonged to him willingly, where I'd chosen him. Sometimes I think he even believed those lies. But I never did. Even when I smiled or thanked him for a few minutes in the garden. Even when I nodded as he claimed the outside world was too dangerous for me. Inside, I was screaming. I was never free. Not in the dark cellar. Not in the kitchen. Not even when he dared to take me outside. Yes, he actually brought me out once. To a hardware store. I was older by then, no longer a child. He walked me beside him, warning me what to say if anyone spoke to me. He threatened me about what he'd do if I tried to run. I didn't try. I wasn't ready. But standing there in public, surrounded by strangers who didn't know who I really was, something shifted in me. I realized he wasn't some all-powerful monster. He was just a man who could make mistakes. And one day, I would have the courage to use that. Until then, I kept up the act, pretending to agree, to obey, to be the person he wanted. But behind my quiet eyes, I was still me. Natascha. And I hadn't given up. 8 years. That's how long I spent in that prison he called a home. 3,096 endless days. Somewhere along the way, I stopped counting. I stopped waiting for someone to rescue me. Instead, I started planning how to save myself. Hope didn't come in grand, sweeping moments. It was small and sharp. The feel of wind on my face for a few stolen minutes in the yard. The sight of a neighbor behind a fence. A laugh drifting in from the street. Those were proof the world still existed, that I hadn't been completely forgotten. But Wolfgang grew more paranoid over time. He tightened his grip, made me clean obsessively, forced me to memorize his rules and repeat his twisted beliefs. Yet, ironically, he also started depending on me more. He talked to me for hours. He was so afraid of being alone that he needed my company. And that gave me leverage. The more he trusted me, the more freedom he gave. Carefully, slowly. He let me use the vacuum cleaner. He let me cook. Occasionally, he even left me alone upstairs for short periods. That's when I really paid attention. I listened for sounds. I watched the locks. I plotted every tiny detail. I never knew if the right moment would come, or when. But I made myself a promise. If it did, I would act. I wouldn't freeze. I wouldn't doubt. I would run. But even as I planned, the fear never truly left me. He was unpredictable. Some days he was eerily calm, treating me like a companion. Other days he turned violent, forcing me back into the cellar for days at a time with no light or food, just to remind me who was in charge. But by then, I had changed too. I wasn't the frightened 10-year-old he'd stolen. My mind was clear. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I held on to the memory of my mother. Her face, her voice. The last words we exchanged. I believed she hadn't stopped searching. That somewhere, someone still held out hope for me. I just had to find my way back to them. And I felt that moment coming closer. It was a sweltering summer day in Vienna, August 2006. I was 18 by then. By that time, Wolfgang had grown careless. Maybe he thought he had fully broken me. Maybe he believed I'd never dare leave. Or maybe he was just exhausted from the endless lies and secrecy. That day, he asked me to clean his car. It wasn't the first time, but something was different. He handed me the vacuum, walked away, left the car keys in the ignition, and didn't bother to close the gate behind him. It was open. I looked around. The street was quiet but alive. Just a few steps away was freedom. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't locked in. My heart thundered in my chest so hard I thought it would split me open. My body froze. Was it a trap? Was he watching me to test my loyalty? What if I ran and no one believed me? But then, deep inside, I heard a voice I'd silenced for so long. Run! I dropped the vacuum, stepped out of the car, and ran barefoot down the street. My legs felt like they might collapse. But I didn't stop. I saw a woman I didn't know and forced out the words I'd kept hidden for nearly a decade. Please help me. My name is Natascha Kampusch. I was abducted 8 years ago. At first she looked confused, but then she understood. She believed me. She called the police. And just like that, I was free. After 3,096 days, after losing almost half my life to that basement, I was no longer a prisoner. Later that day, Wolfgang threw himself in front of a train. He ended his own life rather than face justice. He would never stand trial. Never be made to hear me speak the truth freely. But I had survived him. I was alive. And I was ready to speak. People think freedom is the moment you step outside. But they don't see what comes next. The world I returned to wasn't the same as the one I'd left at 10 years old. And I wasn't the same person. I was a young woman, marked by fear, silence, and the will to survive. The media descended instantly, cameras, reporters, headlines screaming my name. The girl who escaped, held captive for 8 years, prisoner of a madman. But I wasn't a headline. I was Natascha. I had lived every minute of that nightmare, and I didn't need strangers to tell my story for me. I needed them to hear it from me. Some people were compassionate. Others were cruel. They asked why I hadn't run sooner, why I didn't scream. Some even doubted I'd really been held against my will, as if I needed to prove my suffering. But I understood why they found it hard to grasp. No one wants to believe that something like that can happen. That a child can vanish, yet still be alive, hidden right under everyone's noses. So I chose to speak. Carefully, publicly. I did interviews. I wrote about what happened. Not because I wanted fame, but because I wanted control over my own narrative. I visited the home I'd been stolen from. I reunited with my mother. She had never stopped searching. She had kept hoping every single day. That meeting was painful and complicated. So much time lost. So many years we could never reclaim. But love had survived, even through all the hurt. I tried to live a normal life again. To shop for food. To walk in the sun. To make my own decisions. But freedom was not simple. The outside world could feel more frightening than the basement had. There were no physical walls anymore. But there were scars on my mind and in my heart that no one else could see, but that I carried everywhere. Still, I pushed forward, step by step, because surviving wasn't enough. I wanted to truly live. People call me the girl who escaped, but I'm more than what was done to me. For 8 years, that man tried to erase my sense of self. He kept me in the dark, stole my childhood, tried to strip away my choices, but he never managed to destroy me. When I finally rejoined the world, I had to relearn everything. How to make decisions, how to trust people, how to breathe without fear. Healing doesn't happen in an instant. Even now, all these years later, the past is still with me. In small ways, in quiet moments. It's a shadow that sometimes fades, but sometimes lingers. But I'm not broken. I've spoken my truth. I've written my story, not to remain stuck in the pain, but to own it, so that no one else could define me by what happened. I've studied, I've traveled, I've built a life. There's no manual for how to live after something like that. No guide for what to do when you're suddenly free. But every day, I've tried to move forward with honesty and strength. Some people still ask why I didn't run sooner, why I seemed too calm, why I didn't act like the victim they expected. But survival doesn't look just one way. It can look like silence, like smiles that hide terror, like waiting and choosing the exact right moment. And when it finally came, I ran with every last ounce of strength I had. I don't want pity. I don't want to be famous. I want people to understand that resilience is real, that even in the darkest prison, hope can survive. I was 10 years old when he took me. I was 18 when I escaped. My name is Natascha Kampusch, and I am still here.